Hey y'all, this is Jenny Velicky and you're listening to The Funky Farm Girl. This is episode 58. You don't have to be an expert. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, before we answer that question, let's talk about what's happening on the homestead this week. This week, the plan is to plant loads and loads of sunflowers and pumpkins. I am finally ready to fill the poo patch from the chicken run with lots and lots of pumpkin plants and sunflowers and just start to bring in the beauty that will just be exploding when it comes around to fall. So I'm super excited to add both of those to my garden. So be sure to check out Instagram, The Funky Farm Girl over on Instagram and on Facebook to see pictures and updates of how the garden is coming along this year. It's bigger and better than even last year's garden, which was my biggest and best so far. Again, always learning, always growing, just like I hope you are. In addition to that, we're sprucing up the homestead. We have graduation coming up in just a few days for my daughter Gracie. And so we're just doing some last minute preparations and sprucing everything up, putting the spit shine on the old homestead and making it look nice for all of our guests that we have coming this weekend. Cannot wait to celebrate graduation with my daughter Gracie. And so that's what's happening on the homestead this week. So this week's topic is you don't have to be an expert. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm afraid to say something about a topic. For me, when I started this podcast, I was afraid to talk about gardening because I didn't have a lot of experience and I didn't know a lot, and I was really worried that somebody was going to ask me a question that I didn't know the answer to, and that they would see that I was a fraud, that I was pretending to know more than I did, or that I was presenting myself as an expert when I wasn't, and I didn't want to be fake. I wanted to be genuine. I wanted to be real, but I also wanted to share what I was doing and what I was learning and all the things that I was growing and the things I was excited about, and I didn't know how to balance that. And so today, that's what I want to talk to you about. Every week now, I get questions about weeding and planting locations and pests and companion planting, what goes with what, or people who are having trouble with plants. And every week, I'm using Google. I'm going to YouTubers and blogs and books to reference and find the answers that you, the listener, need. Because when you message me, you may assume that the answer that I send you is something that I just knew off the top of my head. But I want to let you in on a little secret. I'm not an expert at gardening. Not only that, I'm okay with it. I am only in my second year of growing from seed. Up until this point, I had tried a couple times to grow from seed and had been a massive fail on all counts. I've had more failures than successes before we moved to our homestead. I'm having more successes now, but not everything goes according to plan. I've still had some major fails, and there's still things that I'm trying to figure out and learn. For example, carrots. I'm still trying to figure out how to grow some carrots that are bigger around than my pinky. So, if you have carrot tips for me, send me an email. So, how am I able to answer all these questions? And why am I the one that people are looking to for answers? Well, it's because I've learned two things, and I want to pass them on to you today. You can use these two things, whether your passion is gardening, whether it's cooking, whether it's makeup, whether it's sustainable living, being green and natural, maybe it's thrifting, maybe you're an artist, maybe you're in sales. the best advice I can give you is these two things. If you remembered these two things, I hope that it takes away the fear of not sharing who you are and what you know and what your experience is. Because I think the world deserves to see that part of you and to hear what you have to say. So, what are those two things? Number one, never stop learning. Like I said, I am all the time reading books, watching YouTube, finding articles online, logging into conferences, or wow, what a dream it would be to go to some conferences in person for homesteading, listening to podcasts, and then doing some experiments of my own, and then just the day-to-day experience of growing a garden and doing the things that I've learned and read about, and then watching what happens when I do them. Experience is one of the greatest teachers there is, because you can read about something all day long and have the head knowledge, but the experience is what really cements it into a skill for you. For example, you could read a book about swimming, and you could know all the mechanics about how to move your arms and where to put your head and what your feet should be doing and how your body is supposed to feel in the water. But if you've never gotten in a pool and taken those strokes and gone out to where your feet don't touch, then you haven't really experienced what it's like to swim. And it's the same with gardening. You can read all the books and watch all the YouTubers and, listen to all the podcasts. But if you're not digging in and trying it yourself, then you're missing out on a whole big key of learning. So make sure that you're experiencing things and experiment. Say to yourself, what would happen if I did this? Or, I know I'm past the date to plant this, but I wonder what would happen if I did it anyway. Would it still grow? One of the greatest examples I have of this is my loofah gourds last year. I wanted to dry out the sponges and harden them up quickly without them sitting on my counter of my hutch for weeks at a time, barely getting dry. And I kind of figured I could put them in my dehydrator and I would quickly dry them out. But the things that I read said that the heat from the dehydrator might actually cause my seeds to not be viable when it came time to plant them in the summer. And so I was a little bit hesitant, but I decided to experiment. I decided to use what I had and go ahead and try to dehydrate my loofah gourd. And if it worked, then I would have both a dry sponge that dried quicker and seeds that were viable. But if it didn't work, the worst that would happen is I'd still have a dried sponge, but I would have to buy a couple packs of seeds in the spring. And that was a risk I was willing to take. And so I put the sponge into the dehydrator. It dried it out much quicker than I anticipated that it would. And guess what? I planted those seeds this spring, and they're viable. I have seedlings ready to go into the poo patch with the pumpkins this week. So, if I had not experimented, all I would have is loofah that may still be drying out, and possibly seeds that had molded from the extended time of moisture while I was waiting for that to happen. So, the more you learn, the more you know. And there's always more to learn. So, never stop learning. Number 2, never stop sharing what you're learning. I always would rather hear, come along with me, or watch me try to do this, rather than, let me tell you what you need to do. I want to learn why somebody's doing something a certain way. I want to see them in the process of learning and growing, because that inspires me. When we can see people and people can watch you as you're learning and they can see you succeed, it gives them confidence to try themselves. And more importantly, if they see you fail and then you analyze and you make some adjustments and you try again, that gives them even more confidence to try, because you've showed them that failure isn't the end of the world. There's going to be 100 people out there, maybe thousands of people out there, who are doing what you're doing. There are hundreds and thousands of homesteaders out there on Instagram and even on podcasting. They're doing what you're doing. They might have more experience than you. They might have more education than you. But that doesn't mean that your voice isn't needed. No one else has your perspective and your experience. No one else sees it exactly the way you do. And no one else is going to share it the way you will. You don't have to be an expert to share what's important to you. Be brave enough to add your voice and your face to the conversation. There's always going to be somebody with more experience or knowledge, but there will never be another you. And ultimately, that's what's going to draw people in to listen and to watch. It's you. It's your perspective, your experience, your face, your voice. That's what people are drawn to. It's not the information itself. It's the person who's sharing the information and the way in which they share it. So dig in. Learn something new. Grow in it. And then don't be shy about sharing it with the world, because we need your unique experience and perspective. This week's gardening book highlight is Grow Your Own Mini Fruit Garden, Planting and Tending Small Fruit Trees and Berries in Gardens and Containers. This book is by Christy Wilhelmi. She is the founder of Gardenerd, which is a blog and a podcast. I'll put a link to her social media and to this book in the podcast, in the show notes. If you want to learn how to properly plant trees and shrubs for long-term health, if you want to manage pests and diseases naturally, if you want to select the best site for each fruit plant, choose varieties with increased disease resistance, prune dwarf trees to keep them super compact, feed and water your fruit garden for improved yield, and use a unique technique to grow multiple fruits together in one compact area, then this book is for you. If you wish in your little homestead that's in the middle of a suburb or a small area of land, if you wish that you had more space so that you had berries and fruit trees and orchards and things like that, then this book is what you need. Just like last week, this is a new feature for the podcast. I'm going to put the link to the book and the social media for the author in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. And also be sure to go to my IGTV button on Instagram at The Funky Farm Girl on Thursday, June the 10th, to see a book review of this particular book. I'll walk you through different pages and highlight the things that I most liked about it, and you can get a real good look at this book, and there'll be a link in the show notes and also in the IGTV video, so you can go and purchase the book for yourself if it's one that you would like to add to your homestead library. Again, Thanks for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the Funky Farm Girl podcast. Please be sure to leave me a review and share with your friends. There's no better compliment for me. Now, go learn something and share it with the ones you love.